Welcome to Go-to-Market Science. In this podcast, we share tangible, actionable playbooks from the trenches, working as go-to-market strategy and RevOps consultants for our clients here at Union Square Consulting, and candid conversations with revenue leaders in the market that have been there. Now let's get into it.
Today on the CRO Stories segment, I'm sitting down with Maimone, CRO at Lucid Link. Lucid Link is a cloud collaboration platform that created its own category, and Michael was brought in to take what was already a fast-growing company and build the go-to-market infrastructure that would take it to the next level. Before Lucid Link, he spent years in enterprise leadership at ZoomInfo, Adobe, and Marketo. Today, we're talking about what it looks like to walk into a company that's growing but not yet wired to scale, and how to rework the go-to-market engine underneath it without losing momentum. So, Michael, you ran a $330 million enterprise division at ZoomInfo and grew a product line from $0 to $75 million. Then you took the CRO seat at a 250-person startup that's now over $50 million in ARR. What was the biggest challenge jumping from ZoomInfo to Lucid Link?
Yeah, it's a great question, Rachel. I think the biggest challenge was, even though I spent 5 years at ZoomInfo and saw an incredible amount of growth and change and was able to put my fingerprints on a lot of it, moving into a startup environment for the first time, you have all of these grand ideas and you've seen what good looks like at scale, but the translation of those ideas to actualization and understanding all of the systems and process and the people work that goes into it, I underestimated it, honestly. There was a ton of good intent. There was a ton of good work that had already been done at Lucid Link, but when you are in a position where you're being asked to scale very aggressively in a challenging market, there's not a lot of time to sit back and wait. There is a bias for action and a desire to do, and working through systems and process build and bringing people along created a really interesting dynamic in the first 6 months.
And so when you were looking at this opportunity beforehand and kind of planning your approach to it, what did you think the job was going to be?
I thought that the job was going to be come in and build on top of the systems that were already in place. There was defined product market fit. There was a very real market pull that had been created. And as I had been looking at opportunities in the market, Lucid Link represented something that I've always really been drawn to, which was malleability. So we have a vertical use case around rich media and M&E. But the thing that was so interesting to me was this struck me as something that was really extensible sort of across tech and across even legacy organizations. As you continue to see this investment in cloud infrastructure and AI, our offering is not limited to the verticals that we played in historically. There was just a need to create the awareness and the scalability of our systems and people to be able to go out and capture a broader slice of the market. And that was the thing that I was really most excited about. And when I got inside, it became very, very apparent that the market pull was real for a reason, and it represents a huge opportunity. So broadening the aperture as you're beginning to come online and get integrated into the business, it becomes much more challenging than what it appeared that it would be on the surface.
Mm-hmm. Give me an example of something that you expected that would be in place once you got in there that just wasn't there.
Yeah. Segmentation. So, I think a lot of CROs and sales leaders, we have a tendency to start at the middle of the problem, which is looking at the sales process, looking at the opportunity matriculation, understanding, where does the funnel get jammed up? But the real secret is starting at the top of that funnel. And that is around segmentation, rep distribution, understanding where your target buyers are, and making sure that you're dividing territories in a way that everybody has enough to eat, but you're not either overly prescriptive and you're not too broad, because if you're overly prescriptive, then you run the risk of not finding customers and prospects in market. And if you're too broad, the average salesperson tends to get analysis paralysis because there's just too much wood to chop. And so not having a defined segmentation model was a real opportunity for us to sort of tighten the operational belt. The other thing that's interesting about Lucid Link is small organization, global footprint. So we have a significant sales apparatus that's in EMEA, specifically in the UK, as well as a large sales force in the United States. So we had the double-edged sword of you've got a channel-friendly UK function that's fairly well defined, and you've got to carve up by individual countries, and that's based on who speaks which language. And then in the US, you've got this broad swath of the universe and a relatively small amount of people to cover that much space. So how do you actually define what good looks like for a rep at each segment of the business across, commercial, mid-market, and enterprise?
And how did these issues with segmentation affect your data and reporting and what you could and couldn't trust?
Yeah, it's a good question. It affects everything because you get conflating data points around win rates and op creation rates, and how does the top of the funnel from a marketing standpoint convert at the mid and lower funnel. We had some more junior reps working more advanced and larger complex accounts. We had some strategic reps who were working on, sort of smaller to mid-market post-production houses and video effects studios, which resulted in decent returns from a revenue perspective. But the durability of the revenue and the long-term growth of those accounts didn't necessarily correlate with the ASP that we were getting up front. And so you got a lot of noise in the data. And we had some challenges around separating signal from noise, as a lot of organizations do, so that we could really cut down into what is our actual ICP? Who are the people who buy most efficiently from us? And how do we get ourselves in front of those individuals proactively versus relying on inbound through the website?
And so what is breaking downstream when you have these segmentation issues and trust issues with your data and reporting?
So you get this standard response of rep infighting, right? Oh, this is my account. It should have been my lead. I was at that trade show. This should have come to me. East Coast, West Coast, mid-market commercial. Everybody's pointing fingers around each other. Because when you're dealing with a segmentation engine that is not well defined and well enforced, you inevitably wind up with people fishing in each other's ponds. And so that was the biggest challenge. And then that dovetails into rep inefficiency and a lack of accountability and clarity around what they're actually supposed to be working on. And so at the end of the day, every revenue leader's job primarily is to drive top line growth and revenue durability. And if you can't articulate where the fallout is occurring and help your sales teams be successful, then you're going to fail as a leader.
Really, yeah, it impacts everything. Like the revenue impact is the biggest thing that you can see downstream, but everything that happens before that affects everybody at the company and how you look.
That's exactly right. And I'm less concerned about, I'm less concerned about how I look, but when you get into a position where you have the entirety of the company looking at that funnel, the velocity of it, and looking to point a finger at one specific thing that is wrong, that's the deception of this whole process. Is there's not one thing that breaks down. It's a series of either bad data, misguided data, or KPIs that don't align to what's actually happening downstream. And so you get this sort of amorphous blob of challenges, and then you have to sort of unwind it on the fly while continuing to hit pipeline generation targets, while trying to maintain win rates, and while you're still trying to deliver top line results. It becomes really, really challenging.
And how long did it take to fix these issues and get back on the right track?
Well, that's a great question. Segmentation is an evergreen challenge. The ICP is constantly changing and evolving. The way that we go to market is constantly evolving. And so it was 6 months before we really got to a clean baseline. And the opportunity that creates is now you can start to resegment and realign. And so we have, like most organizations, a very strong direct sales channel. We have a reseller channel. We have strategic alliances with the likes of AWS, where we, sell through the AWS marketplace. We have MSPs and sort of bulk data server providers that resell our solutions to third parties. And we have a very robust PLG engine. And so for a 250 person company, we have 5 different modalities that we go to market with. And so once we had a clean baseline, we could start to understand who's buying what from whom and in which geos they reside, which has given us the ability to become a little bit more intentional about the way that we're segmenting and carving, and not only just for the sales teams and for territory builds, But what we're doing from a lead routing standpoint, so we're a lean data shop. We use Marketo for our core lead management. And we use Qualified to route inbound leads on our website. And so all of those lead capture apparatus are using a centralized sort of logic brain that runs through lean data. That's allowing us to be more efficient with the way the leads are distributed.
And what was your process for approaching the segmentation issue and, breaking it down, building it back up, and fixing everything?
To be gentle and to start small. You run the risk of tipping the whole thing over if you just go in and start to hack things to pieces. And so one of my favorite sayings is how do you eat the elephant? Right? The answer is one bite at a time. And so we started with looking at the ICP in a vacuum. So we did a dump of all of our opportunity reporting. We looked at closed won, closed lost, contact roles, contract signers, and we started to triangulate. We had an idea of what our ICP was, but how does that actually foot to the data that we have that we can dump out of CRM and actually take into a clean room and actually start to analyze? And what we found was we had two very distinct strata. We had an enterprise strata that was large organizations that were coming in, sometimes with a small initial land, sometimes more meaningfully, but the organic growth over time was really strong and durable. And then we had a commercial segment that was really strong. We weren't seeing a high take rate in the sort of mid-market and lower enterprise, but we started to focus some sales resources instead of just looking for PLG conversion into sales-led. We started pointing some sales resources towards that lower end of the market where we were deploying some advertising dollars, some marketing spend, and some outbound efforts to drive some new logo acquisition. And that, for the first time in my career, that cohort of commercial actually represents a higher level of revenue durability than most mid-market and enterprise shops. So that was a nice data point for us to identify. And the rationale as to why became sort of interesting. It's because these companies have real storage needs and demand, but they lack the funding to buy conventional on-prem appliances or go direct into Amazon or GCP and acquire large tranches of S3 storage. So it was an opportunistic segment for us to show up in, and we found that it was really fairly durable compared to what you typically see in commercial.
What was the biggest opportunity that you've identified at Lucid Link?
Yeah, so there's a list, but I think the biggest opportunity that we identified, and it was relatively early on, is with that higher take rate we had with large enterprises. We were going through, and again, as a startup and you're doing business with some of the hyperscalers, you get taken through the ringer from a legal and compliance standpoint. And so we had about 30 MSAs that we had in force with big global organizations that we had then pulled through in order to get our initial lands. And our initial lands with these organizations, 50, 100, couple 100K, but nothing, really massive and impactful, but going through the same procurement and legal cycle as you would be for a $5 to $10 million deal. And because there was so much market opportunity, we had a tendency to go through this, take our initial land, pass it off to customer success, and just go and look for the next whale that we could take down. And so when I came in, once we got through the segmentation exercise, this was something that became really apparent, which is we have hunting licenses in some of the largest organizations on the planet, and we're not taking advantage. And so we began the process of account planning and territory planning, and even down to opportunity planning, where we were looking at, okay, how can we go sell sort of horizontally across the organization with the known use cases? And now what we've moved into with some of our latest product releases is how can we actually go to the centralized IT buyers and have a much more centralized discussion about cloud optimization at scale, which is the really exciting path that we're starting to head down now.
So what was the process then of, building out this new segment and getting adoption from your sales team, new talk tracks, I'm guessing, new processes for selling, for handoffs?
Yeah, so we've deployed a couple of different strategies. Primarily is we've created a sort of subsegment at the top that is strategic. So above enterprise, we now have strategic, and strategic account reps own a named account territory. That's 25 accounts. And there is a mix of net new logo acquisition and customer accounts. And they are responsible solely for new logo acquisition, retention, and expansion. So we have AEs that cover net new logo acquisition and account managers today that cover renewal and retention and growth. But our strat teams cover both sides of the fence. And so they now own the land and expand motion. So we've oriented product development towards meeting the needs of the enterprise. We have created new talk tracks and enablement tracks. We've aligned with new strategic partners. Like I said before, the AWS relationship is really, really important here. And we have gone through several different modeling exercises to find what the right number of accounts per rep is. 25 is still technically too high, but we don't have enough surface area to carve them down much further yet. What ultimately has come out of this is we are starting to see, it's not even green shoots. We're seeing real transactional volume and real expansion revenue starting to come out of this motion. And we're actually seeing a really high engagement rate from our customers because we have an opportunity to come transact quickly, and we represent a meaningful increase in productivity for distributed teams. So it's been fairly well received from the customers, even though we are showing up with new messaging and new packaging and, like any good sales team, with our hands out.
Quick note before we keep going, if you're listening to this and thinking, I want to do this stuff for my company, we've published the actual go-to-market ops frameworks that we use with our clients every day at unionsquareconsulting.com/frameworks. You can find our frameworks on diagnosing go-to-market ops, pipeline management, outbound, and even our proprietary go-to-market efficiency pyramid framework. They're all free and ungated right on our website. Go to unionsquareconsulting.com/frameworks, and a link will be in the show notes as well. All right, let's get back to it. Yeah, I'd love to go dig deeper and break down how you came to all these conclusions and how you ruled this out. So, for example, what were some of the modeling exercises that you did to create this capacity plan?
Yeah, so we worked backwards from the AOP, right? And we built a conventional capacity model with the standard quota distribution. And we took that and then measured it against what the quota attainment had been for the trailing 8 quarters. And so what wound up happening was we re-racked the ratio between new logo and expansion to push more emphasis up market into the expansion motion. So the idea being fairly simple thesis, you don't need to capture as many net new logos at the top of that sort of strategic pyramid if you can get 10 to 20x your ASP on an expansion rate as you continue through the life cycle. And so that fed into that lower, the tiering across the lower end of the market, where we had the challenge of understanding of how do we make them narrow enough where it's not analysis paralysis, but not too narrow that we don't have enough capacity to actually cover all the hotspots that pop up across the globe. And when we started to run through some of the data, just through our own win-loss analysis, it gave us that revised ICP. We then went out to ZoomInfo and we went through this very comprehensive data modeling exercise where we did a lookalike model for our, core buyers and the people that show up, or the titles that showed up most often as contact roles on our opportunities. And that led us to a total TAM based on what our lookalike modeling had come back, which was about 200,000 accounts. And then, so you get into TAM, SAM, SOM, right? Our serviceable addressable market was about 80,000 accounts. And our obtainable market that we felt like was something that we could actually access within the next 12 to 15 months is about 50,000 accounts. And so we went very, very intentional at those 50,000 accounts and carved territories to make sure that those were all getting air cover from marketing. We were targeting, specific events, the field events that they were attending. And, so we went to work with trying to cast a very wide net. And then, as I alluded to earlier, we deployed some additional tooling to build some telemetry and understand, Qualified has been a huge lift for us as far as managing the inbound and the chatbot, but the UI on that is phenomenal. We've had really, really good luck with it, but the ability to understand via IP resolution, not only which companies are showing up on the website, but which geos are actually showing up. And that allows us, through our partnership with ZoomInfo, to sort of start to narrow the aperture to understand, okay, well, a company like Nike is coming inbound, but they're coming in from Frankfurt. Which group, which team, how do we go orient our folks that are in the DAC region to go after that specific piece of Nike? It's just allowed us to get much more specific in the way that we are reacting to traffic that we're seeing on the site, which we then use to fuel the outbound motion.
Okay. Yeah. I like that, it's kind of an all-bound motion that you've created. You're taking your inbound signals in order to prioritize lists for your outbound teams.
Yeah. I like all bound. That's,
yeah.
yeah. No, that's pretty good. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do. It's triangulation, because the most important thing that you can do today is meet your buyer in market when they're in market. By the time they raise their hand and reach out to you and actually engage with a chatbot or answer a call from a BDR, even attend a webinar, the buyer journey is largely complete. The first vendor that they reach out to is typically the first vendor that they reach out to is typically the one that they're going to buy. So putting yourself front and center and trying to separate the signal from the noise and be in the right place at the right time to catch that is a lot of what SaaS is becoming today.
Yeah, absolutely. And what it should be coming.
Yeah, I would agree. It's how I like to buy. I mean, I buy a lot of tech. I'm sure you do too. And it's it's increasingly difficult to find an application or a piece of technology that checks all the boxes, that times it just right, that engages at just the right moment. And you get inundated with calls, and God forbid you hit a contact me form on a website, you get blown up for a month. It's like almost as bad as filling out a contact me form on a car dealership's website. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah. We don't do that, by the way. Anyone who sends a message to us on our contact form, like, you'll only talk to the operator or our CEO, but we do get a lot of cold outbound messages that come in through our contact form, which is always very fun. I don't know when that became a trend, but I'd hope it stopped.
Yeah, we see it too, but it's I don't know if it's going to let up anytime soon.
Yeah. So you're using these signals to tell your outbound reps, how to create relevant messaging as well, instead of just like personalized messaging, creating like that relevance. Because I know that this person has, engaged with your material in this way. But what other ways are you helping them prioritize their lists? Because they still, like, 50,000 accounts is still like quite a lot of accounts.
It's a good question. That's what we put into the sort of engine. And so we also have some fairly sophisticated account and lead scoring that plays into how the accounts bubble up. So our territories are all geofenced. And so they're large swaths of the universe. And so using intent, first party and third party intent. And again, I was at ZoomInfo for 5 years, so I'm sure it's no shock to you that we're heavy users of ZI. So using first and third party intent through ZoomInfo and the telemetry we can get from qualified, the idea is to cast a wide net and to react to signals and not just go blindly blast through 50,000 accounts at a time and hope that somebody reacts to an outreach sequence. There is merit and value in sequencing through outreach, and there's the top of mind aspect of it that still exists. But if you are not actively watching and nurturing for intent spikes, champion moves, promotions, funding rounds, announcements of new projects being cast out into the world, you're going to miss your opportunity, and then you're just rowing upstream. And so it's about building systems and tools and process that allows the reps to prioritize their time and optimize their day so that they are able to figure out which accounts are the best ones to target when it's time to go build and rebuild the pipeline, which is obviously an evergreen process. Signal from noise is the most important phrase that I use, and I use it, if you ask my team, probably overuse it, but 10, 15 times a day. Noise is everywhere. Signal is very, very rare and is very, very impactful.
Absolutely, especially with AI these days. It's just getting worse.
Absolutely.
So how has this, this new motion, this more refined segmentation shown up and impacted the rest of the funnel? So your pipeline management, for example.
Yeah, pipeline management is, again, an evergreen challenge. We still have some work to do from stage gating. So we're a med pick shop. So we've got med pick tied to stage gates. And so we have a fairly uniform funnel. We do have some qualification challenges. So we still have our primary dropout point is between qualification and demo. So stage 1 to stage 2. But when you get beyond stage 2, we have a fairly consistent funnel. We've actually seen about a 23% win rate increase from when we started this resegmentation to today. And with that, we've actually brought in about a 20% increase in ASP. So we are winning more opportunities and we are doing it at a higher ASP. And that's just on new logos. So that doesn't even capture any of the work that we're doing as far as the expansion motion in the enterprise. So again, very, very strong, very durable. The issue that I have now is having enough pipeline, which everybody has the same problem, but it's getting harder and harder in my experience to carry a 3.5 to 4.5x coverage ratio with the way that opportunities are moving through funnels today. There's just too much. There's not enough velocity, or there's too much velocity. And so you get this sort of stagnant top or stagnant bottom of the funnel, and you need to constantly redirect to make sure that you are watching the top of the funnel as well as the progression through. Because if you take your eye off of either, they atrophy very, very quickly with the way that the market is moving today.
So how are you approaching that issue? How are you making sure you're, regulating top versus bottom?
So we are doing it through a combination of reporting through Salesforce and by individual manager-led inspection. So we do weekly pipeline reviews. We do bi-weekly pipeline council where we bring marketing ops, sales and revenue operations, all of the relevant sales leaders globally and the marketing leadership, and everybody gets together and we go through a series of dashboards to look at MQL conversions, number of BDR meetings that are set, number of new opportunities, opportunity progression. And then, as I mentioned, we've had a couple of pretty meaningful product releases over the past couple of months. We also track at the individual product level. It's a manual process, but it gets people in the same room, speaking the same way and looking at the same KPIs. And so that is something that I don't have a process or a system or a Tableau dashboard that can take the place of it. Getting everybody in the same room, it's an expensive meeting. It's every other Friday. I don't know that anybody really loves it, but it is absolutely productive and it keeps us on our toes.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we are huge proponents of the pipeline council. We talk about it a ton in a lot of our content and pipeline management content and stuff. It is, I mean, maybe for some companies, it probably is an annoying meeting to have. Some people might not want to be on it. And like you said, expensive meeting, but I think it's also a very lucrative meeting as well, because this isn't the type of meeting that you're like coming in to share numbers and pat each other on the back. You're coming in to like not hold back your punches, really talk about the issues that are happening throughout the entire pipeline from, the beginning of the sale to post-sale and product and everything. And really the mission is just to make the business better and make the customer experience better so you can make more money.
I think that's exactly right. And that was the guideline that I put down in the first one was, this is not performative. This is not a backslapping competition about how many MQLs or this or that. I will caveat this by telling you every week it's not going to be good enough, right? There's no such thing as a perfect pipeline. And so we're never going to be perfect, but this is an opportunity to bring sales and marketing leadership together in a way that is meant to drive the business forward. And if you can do that, you can make it productive. You don't have to love going, but everybody's got a point of view. The sales leaders need to defend the pipeline that they've created and what they've advanced. Marketing has to defend and establish credibility around what the top of the funnel looks like. RevOps and MOPS need to have very tight alignment on what is the lead flow and the lead pass and the enrichment strategy. And everybody's accountable, myself included, to have a readout and a perspective on what we're doing to improve every 2 weeks. And it's that uniform accountability that I think really makes it useful and impactful.
Do you have an example off the top of your head of like an issue that was brought up at a pipeline council meeting that, probably wouldn't have been fixed if it wasn't for this type of meeting?
Yeah, there's one that came up fairly early in the process, and it was around a trade show lead list that got dropped by an automation that never made it to the BDR team. So it's a show that we invested time and money and resources. We had a booth, we sent people. There was not trivial expense. And the BDR leader came to the call. And at this, if I could go back in time, I would recommend that this person actually raise the flag slightly earlier than waiting for the pipeline council meeting, because we lost a week. But he came to the pipeline council asking questions about where was the lead list from the event. And it had been processed through MOPS, and it had been dropped by some automation before it got pushed into Salesforce as a list of leads to go process through. And so we lost a week. And if we hadn't established the cadence around the pipeline council, I don't know that ever would have been picked up.
And then how much money would have been lost from that?
More than I would care to admit to my CFO.
Yeah. Expensive meeting, but lucrative meeting. Lucrative also in the sense of not losing money that you could be losing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it also just shines a light on, you can't rely blindly on automation. As good as we are at building systems and stitching them together and having them talk, there's always something that's just waiting to break, in my experience anyway.
Everything is always waiting to break, in my experience.
That's true too.
Yeah. So what were some of the other results that you have seen through all of this work, the segmentation, the new motion, building this pipeline council and everything, whether that's quantitative or qualitative?
From a overarching results standpoint, the business is growing, it's accelerating, it's healthy. We have sort of pushed our way through what was a pretty challenging macro for us in 2025. So we have a historically high rate of customers that are in the media and entertainment industry. And M&E took some successive hits across 2024 and 2025 with funding shifts, and there was a big strike in Hollywood, and a bunch of productions were sort of pushed off. We have managed to continue to grow and accelerate the business even through all of that. And I think we are actually much better positioned and much stronger to continue to accelerate it to the future, because we have hard-earned wins under our belt. And, we have crossed some pretty significant revenue milestones in the past 6 months. And as we think about the go-forward motion, we have global scale to unlock. We're looking at, unlocking additional geos. I mentioned we have the UK team as sort of an operating unit, but we're thinking about other global geos that we can unlock. We're seeing considerable growth in the US markets. We're starting to see some additional use cases and verticals unlock with some of our new product releases. And so I think a lot in terms of building in Lego, mostly because I have a 9-year-old who's absolutely obsessed with Lego, Rachel. But the beauty of Lego is you could build an actual full-size house out of Lego bricks. You absolutely can. It's strong, it's durable. It would probably cost you more than building a house out of wood. But other than that, it's infinitely extensible. And so when I think of terms of process and scale and systems and people building, I think in terms of Lego. And if I look back over the last 18 months, we have a Lego brick foundation that we can build up and go super deep in the verticals that we already operate in. We can expand it horizontally and go into a sort of conventional platform SaaS play. We have every option imaginable in front of us. We've got a segmentation engine. We've got a data enrichment strategy. We've got a data-driven sort of go-to-market and marketing strategy. And so the biggest accomplishment and the biggest opportunity for us, from my standpoint, is we now have optionality, which is so rare and is such an awesome opportunity. We can choose our own adventure. And that's super empowering and something that I'm really, really excited about.
So, Michael, am I allowed to ask what those revenue milestones were?
Unfortunately, I can't speak in specifics, Rachel, but what I can tell you is that we have nearly doubled revenue since I joined in Q4 of 2024.
Awesome. So if you could go back to day one of Lucid Link, knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I wouldn't have started in the middle. I talked earlier about the fact that most revenue leaders fall into the trap of starting in the middle. because they assume everything leading up to the middle is good and is durable. And that's the place where we naturally gravitate, because it's most of us, it's where we cut our teeth, right? We were successful salespeople. You become a sales manager, you become a VP, and sort of you wind up in this role not organically, but logically, linearly, you wind up in that role. And so your predisposition is to go sink your teeth into the sales process. Go bring me into some deals, show me some leads, help me understand what's going on. And I invested a significant amount of time, and it wasn't the wrong thing to do, because it builds credibility with your leadership team, with your broader ELT. It shows a bias for action. You get into the trenches, you learn what the customers actually think of your product. But if I could wind back the clock, I would have started with my RevOps hat on, and I would have been with a magnifying glass and a flashlight going through all of the dark plumbing around lead routing and scoring and ICP definitions, and really sunk my teeth in there, because I came in post Series C with the remit to go scale this thing. And that means building sales capacity, accelerate sales process, and drive top line growth. What actually needs to happen is you need to make sure that everything leading up to that lead to from marketing to sales delivery is ironclad and is running at least 80% utilization. Meaning, if you don't have enough demand coming through the funnel, you need to figure out how to amplify the demand. If you don't have enough segmentation or the correct segmentation to make sure people are chasing leads that actually close, you're going to wind up burning a bunch of cycles and hire a bunch of people who are going to get frustrated because the territories aren't going to produce. And so if I could go back in time, that is the thing. I would start with my RevOps hat on, and I would dig down deep to understand all of the rhythms of the business before going out and deploying assets and resources to optimize the sales process.
Absolutely. And that's why we keep trying to tell people too. That's what we help with at Union Square Consulting, all that stuff. So we're like, you guys, this is important. Awesome.
It is absolutely
thank you so
important.
much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michael. And where can people find you if they want to follow what you're doing or what Lucid Link is doing?
So LinkedIn is the best place to find me, or on, actually it's just LinkedIn. I'm not really active on any other socials at all. So feel free to connect and follow, but would love to chat and learn more about what other revenue leaders are doing in the space.
Awesome. Well, you have a good night.
Thanks, Rachel. You too.
Thanks for listening to the episode. If this resonated, please give us a 5-star rating and a follow. It helps us reach more people, and you get our latest and greatest content without having to search for it. And if you're looking for hands-on help in go-to-market strategy and/or RevOps, please reach out to us. We help our clients with everything from annual planning to improving processes in go-to-market, implementing systems to support those processes, and go-to-market AI. We're always happy to offer a free consultation to help you identify the best opportunities to improve your go-to-market engine with or without our help. You can find us at unionsquareconsulting.com, and the info will be in our show notes.